Okay.
I'm just curious, when you had the original script, was that always the intended ending, or did you ever consider swapping in something else?
Well, the intended ending was actually always. No, it was always. It really was. I mean, there was this huge sacrifice. I mean, the script has this, 10 little Indian structure where each astronaut gradually dies. Since you're putting a spoiler alert, I'm just going full on.
It'll be safe.
So it'll be fine. But and the final sacrifice that Rosa makes, it was always intended to be, to happen in such a way that emotionally you would think she's actually about to take off, that the reason we got the footage back was because that she made it out there. Even though by then you've had the reveal of knowing that she taped herself inside the ship. And it was always scripted that way. What changed gradually in the first version of the script that I read, the big discovery happened closer to this. It actually happened on the surface of Europa, which actually didn't make sense with the science behind what we know in Europa. Basically, what's really fascinating about Europa is what would be under the ice. So we went through this whole process of playing with the fact that the ship would gradually be sinking into the ice, and that the final moments, we're really going down under, into the water, and that added so much more tension and felt so much cooler. Obviously complicated a lot of things much more. But
did you essentially sink your set?
No. What we did is the final moments. It's actually a miniature that we sank, and that's combined with the real set. And but it was the set had to be on a gimbal. It had to shake. It was very distressed. There was a lot of things to play with in terms of making it really fall apart and fall through the ice. But the idea of actually having the characters have to go down and go under the ice, that came about while we were in pre-production, while we were figuring out the best way to have that ending work.
And how about the science behind what we see at the end?
Well, what we see at the end, and we were talking to some of the JPL scientists who are studying Europa about this. We expect probably to find, single cellular beings, something really simple, or something, or the beginnings of life in Europa. However, they don't rule out the possibility of finding something bigger, something more sophisticated, because the conditions are right for that. So we took the approach of saying, okay, what's the more extreme, and what's the quote unquote ideal, or what would be like their best wish, to find something, a complex creature down there would be amazing, would be what they would, wish for. It's not something that we would rule out. We always approached that life form as something that wouldn't be necessarily after our crew, after the ship, after the astronauts, but it would be something that, if disturbed, if you come into its habitat and it's disturbed, it's going to be curious. It's just going to want to at least reach out and figure out what's going on there, and basically have a crew of scientists drilling through the ice, getting all this thing to vibrate, putting lights in there. Eventually there's going to be some type of reaction to that, but we always approach it as if you have an explorer going to Africa for the first time, centuries ago, and seeing a lion for the first time. Ultimately it's a big cat. It's something that you can relate to, that there's a parallel to something that explorer would have seen before, but it's on a different scope, on a more threatening scope. But unless you're disturbing that animal, it's not gonna come do anything to you. And here, basically, what ends up happening is they're trying to lure it in, closer, so that they could get a better look at it.
And what about the light up component of it? Is that like electricity in a way?
Well, there's bioluminescence that happens in our ocean. We based ourselves quite a bit on what could be found at the bottom of our seas. And you have the strangest creatures that exist. You have extremophiles. You have creatures that so many creatures that use bioluminescence that really feel otherworldly here in on Earth. So we felt we could use some of those concepts and push it a little bit more, a little bit more to an extreme with what we see at the end. It's obviously a little bit of a fantasy of what could be down there, but there's nothing in it that's completely unreal. If we were to look at a creature down here on Earth, you could have all those elements. You could have easily. You probably have even scarier things, and that do exist. So it felt right to play with that. We liked a lot also playing with with size. Not knowing exactly how big this thing is and even when you see it, you're seeing only part of it. So you don't know how much bigger this thing could be. And I think that makes it really fascinating as well. It's you never really get when you get that last shot, which is a good look at it, but even then, it doesn't allow you to fully see, whether it's the size or the actual full design of how it all looks. You still leave a lot to to the imagination as well.
And now this may sound trivial, but did you name it?
We always referred to it as a creature. We never gave it a name. That's funny. That's funny. We never named it.
I was semi-thinking about that seriously, like classifying it as a species, but also, I don't know, maybe just calling it Bob or something.
Yes. No, we never did. That's a good question, actually, because it's the type of thing that would have happened. That we would have ended up referring to it. Probably because we never built it practically. I think if during the shooting itself you have an actual, whether if it was a puppet or something like that, you end up naming it. But because a lot of it came in post-production, the only thing that we did do practically is when you have the close-up of Katya's eye, what she's seeing, we did the reflection of her eye, we did that practically. We did that with LEDs and with like little, strings of lights basically, which was really beautiful. It was really cool looking. And because it is in her eye, it works really well. So that was our physical reference, but you see so little of it then that it was just a reference for what we would see later.